जय हिंद भारत माता की जय दोस्तों वी आर बैक अगेन विद द न्यू एपिसोड ऑफ नेवर से डाई सीरीज so never say die attitude also gets developed because of one very important reason in every soldier, that every soldier thinks country always comes first and self at last. So while in uniform, they of course carry out all the duties considering this fact in mind, but then it becomes an integral part of the personality. And some of us, even after hanging the uniform, carry out with the same grit and perseverance to keep serving the country selflessly and ensuring that each and every part of the country is becoming even more beautiful. One such personality is Colonel Christopher Rego. He is among us today. We will interact, discuss, and understand that how his mission has become now so powerful that through peace and education, he is bringing happiness in the most beautiful part of our country. Let's welcome Colonel Christopher Rego on the show. Sir, Jai Hind and welcome to the show.
Jai Hind, DP.
So to begin with, as I understand, you are the fourth generation officer. So now with so much of experience of generations, do you understand that a personality gets changed because of the training in the various military academies?
I absolutely think so, DP. I think the life of every soldier is dramatically and drastically changed by the training he undergoes and by the many years that he spends in service. There are many aspects, but I will tell you three in particular which strike me. I think first is the courage and tenacity, which is way beyond the ordinary, that develops through all the challenges that you face in training. Your officers who train you, they put you through the worst, and you come out stronger with every challenge that you face. So that courage is something that remains with you. It's not only a physical courage, it's a mental courage that you have for the rest of your life. Another thing that comes through very strongly is, I would say, the moral character. And this is things like integrity and loyalty. We have to remember that in service, as buddies, our lives depend on each other. And it's a huge characteristic to have this integrity and loyalty. And a third thing which I can say that has personally affected me through these generations is that when you join the army, you leave all the parochial things behind, of community, where you come from, religion, the whole world, everybody becomes your religion, You have a broad-mindedness. You don't just tolerate diversity, you actually celebrate it. And let me tell you that in my own family, over these three generations, we could find that our culture is completely changed because we have picked up the best from everywhere, the best of food, the best of clothing, even the language has changed. So that is, some of the biggest changes that you find when you are trained in the army, when you are part of this service family.
Great, sir. And I'm sure, as I also thought that I am going to army, there a lot of adventure activities would be there. The adventurism will, desire of adventurism will get fulfilled.
Yes.
But as I understand, not just during this service, in fact, what you mentioned earlier, that even during your leave, you used to do some such activities. So how do you used to consume your leave? Can you throw a little light on that part?
Yeah, so the spirit of adventure also gets teased while you're in the army. You're always searching for something new. You've got a sense of immense, curiosity to learn more about the way of life, people, to travel, to trek. So I never let a leave go by while I was in the army, especially when I was a bachelor. So it was out on trek, it was traveling, and occasionally I did a few serious things also. For instance, if you remember, there were big earthquakes that happened, say, I think in September 1993 in Latur, in Maharashtra. And a similar earthquake happened in Bhuj in 2001.
Right.
So, again, that sense of curiosity, again, that desire to learn more. I took leave during those two earthquakes, and I was in each of these zones for 10 days. And that gave me a real sense of what happens in such disaster, how the organization, how people interact with each other. So many things like this. So again, thanks to the army for this absolute sense of adventure.
That is amazing, sir, because generally when we take leave, we tend to spend time with the family, in leisure. But here it is you who are, who deliberately ensure that leave is taken during such need of hours when people are looking up to you.
Yeah.
Amazing, sir. I also understand, sir, larger part of your service, larger time of your service, you have spent in Northeast. What is
Yes.
that connect you found in yourself getting attracted towards the Northeast?
Yes, I'm happy to say that I spent more than 7.5 years of my service in Northeast India, and that was by choice. I actually volunteered to go there. So our Northeast is a place of spectacular natural beauties. It's the mountains, rivers, forests, the green emerald green fields, and there's also the immensely diverse culture among so many different tribes and communities, state to state, even within the states. And then, of course, there is all the culture, the tradition, the dances, and I personally happen to be a musician, so I enjoy that portion as well in the Northeast. So that's the beautiful part of the Northeast. But then, on the other hand, there are parts of our Northeast that have been plagued with violence since decades. Things have been going slightly wrong there. A couple of states where there has been a lot of deaths among our colleagues in the services, the paramilitary forces, as well as among the civilians. So, all in all, it's a mixed bag, but I am so fortunate indeed that I got to spend such a beautiful time during my 2 tenures in the Northeast.
But you continued serving there even after getting retired. What made you take that decision that you want to establish yourself in Northeast area of our country?
Okay, so for one thing, my first posting was in the state of Mizoram, where I was posted with the Assam Rifles at the state capital of Aizawl. And when I was there, I noticed that there was quite a bit of angst among many of the local people against Indians, in inverted commas, and the rest of India. I think that was a hangover from the bad days of the insurgency. So even though there was a peace accord signed in 1986, there was still a lot of resentment among the local people against the rest of the country and against, Indians in general. I don't blame it because it was I don't blame anybody because it was a very violent time. And also there are certain factors like culture, which are so, immensely different, not just, in the Northeast, it's across India actually, the difference between a Punjabi like yourself and maybe going to Tamil Nadu, what it's like.
True.
So between the people of the Northeast and say people coming from elsewhere, there are so many things that strike you immediately. First is the physical features, and there's so many other things. For instance, you and I may be able to get along, on things like we can talk about Sachin Tendulkar, or we can talk about cricket, Bollywood, even samosas for that matter. But somebody in a village in Nagaland or in Mizoram wouldn't hear of these things. It's absolutely different. So there is a bit of an emotional gap. And I'd like to say that time changes things. People are intermingling, interacting, and this communication is getting better and better.
But sir, what made you to continue serving there and even after retirement, when you thought that let me carry on with my work here, what type of work you thought that will bring little change, the gaps will get fulfilled, which you saw between the Northeast people, the local people, and the larger part of the India?
Yes. So I told you that I found this emotional gap between people the Northeast and people who are coming from the outside. So a great thing is that I was with my family. My wife was with me during that time. We decided that as a decision, let's get closer to the people. Let's learn about them, their way of life, their culture, and their realities. And when you really spend time with them, it is so different from the prejudices that you pick up from elsewhere. That people in the Northeast are like this. They are very much like the Chinese. They all eat noodles. They all into kung fu. When you go there and find it's a drastic, difference. They're just common people like you. You may look a little different. There's a little bit of difference maybe in culture, language, and whatnot. So we decided that we should find out where is this angst coming from? Where is this sort of suspicion coming from? And we came to a conclusion that a very big reason was that many of the next generation, the children, were not getting a chance to get to school. They were not able to access an education for two reasons. One is that they stayed in very remote areas, in the hills, and you can't have a school on top of every hill like you have their villages. So to get to the school, the children had to go through the forest, go through the rivers, pick up the leeches from their feet and get to school. And even when they were schools, they had the issue of the accessibility, the financial, that they were not able to pay their fees. And I would say that many of the government schools were unfortunately not functional. So two issues of the physical access to school and the financial access to school were two very big factors that were affecting people over there. And my wife and I decided, let's be the difference. Let's be the difference. So with our meager, I would say our salary as my salary as a major. So we decided to be that, to make that difference, let's start sponsoring the children. We also thought that this is a beautiful way to get closer to the local community, and that's exactly the way it happened. These children started doing very well in their studies. We got to know their parents. We got invited into their communities. Soon people who are close to us, our relations, our friends, my classmates joined in this venture. The numbers of children being sponsored increased greatly. And that is how we chanced upon this idea of peace through education, whereby we can make a difference through education.
Wonderful, sir. I would like to know, sir, who was that first lucky kid whom you supported in the beginning?
Yes. So it so happened that the word spread that here is a couple in the Assam Rifles who are trying to help some of the underprivileged local people. Right. And there was this very smart boy who used to come in and play the guitar in our house, who made friends with my little children at that time. And I thought that such a smart person, I asked him, so what are your plans? So he happened to be the son of a vegetable seller. His mother was a vegetable seller and his father was a carpenter. And they stayed literally in a very small, let's call it almost like a hut, which didn't even have an address. And I asked him and he said that, sir, I have plans to go to America, to study hard there, get some qualifications, come back and work with my people. So I said, wow, this is some big ideas. But then when my wife and I saw this kid and saw his potential, he said there's something special. And one fine day he came home and said that, sir, I've got admission to this university in Oregon, in America. So this was...
You mean to say a boy who was a kid of vegetable seller,
yes,
got admission in University of America?
Absolutely, through his own merit and through his own efforts.
Superb.
Yeah. And he didn't have the finances for that. He gave us a hint. So my wife and I decided that this guy's going to be something in life. Let's help him. So we had just got a sum of money, for our transfer to Mizoram and whatever. And we said, okay, let's put it at his disposal. It was quite a considerable sum of money. And a week later, 10 days later, this boy was off to the USA. And we had told him just one thing. Yeah. We had told him just one thing, that this is a loan. When you have the opportunity and when you start earning, we don't want any interest. Just give it back to us so that we could use it for another child. And he said, sure. And less than 2 years later, when I was leaving for Mizoram, I happened to mention it to him. He said, no, so wait, my parents are coming to meet you. And they came the next day with a small packet, a pumpkin and a shawl for us. And this was the money. So I called him and I said that you're still studying and you've given me back the money. He said, no, sir, I've worked. I've done all these extra duties on the campus. I don't feel comfortable keeping this money. So I said, wow, this is absolutely fabulous. And he said, the next thing that he said was that, sir, if you feel okay, there's another friend of mine doing his master's in computer applications and he's struggling quite a bit. If you could pass on this loan to him, I'll be really happy. So we passed on our loan to that boy. In fact, we increased it a little bit. And 8 months later, he gave the money back because he got into the corporate sector. So then that is where my wife and we thought that our money in the bank is only getting interest. Whereas here it was actually making lives. That was the seminal moment, I would say.
That's amazing, sir. But when you were using the money which was supposed to be used by your family and you were spending so much of time with your family time with others, how did your family take it? How did, especially your kids, how did they take it?
I'm very happy to say that the whole family has been with me right along. my biggest supporter and the person who's encouraged me most is my life partner and my wife. There's no way that what we are doing would have reached the level at which it is now without her immense support and her participation. So she's actually a mother to all the kids that we sponsor and we look after. And my children too, coming from the army background, they celebrate this. The children coming from different states, different cultures, and they are one with them. There is no difference. So we are absolutely united as a family as far as this purpose is concerned.
But sir, I want to still ask again that, when you mentioned that the Northeast people were looked upon in a little different manner by the rest of the India, I'm sure there must be the similar type of a different viewpoint towards the rest of the India in the Northeast region. So did you ever find that your children were looked upon a little differently and they were supposed to, adjusting was a little hard for them?
You said it in the correct way. This perception difference is both ways. It's not just one way. It is how people in the rest of India see Northeast people. And when you go to remote parts of the Northeast, they see you in a similar fashion. But having said that, my kids also and my wife and I, we went with that open mind to learn about the reality and the culture. We took it as a decision and didn't just let it happen. We created those circumstances. We decided we're going to enjoy their food, enjoy their festivals, and we're going to be mingling with them without being judgmental and without being patronizing.
Amazing.
So keeping away those prejudices, it brought us a lot closer, and we were able to overcome the slight emotional differences that may have been there. So I think it's all about communication. It's all about engaging. That's how these barriers are broken.
It's amazing to see, sir, that you being the fourth generation, that to a warrior, a trained soldier, converting towards a social, activities, becoming a socialpreneur. How did that transformation happen, and what made you start doing such activities when still you were in uniform?
So the job of a soldier, it involves courage and bravery, and no matter what, it involves enforcing the writ of the nation at any cost.
Absolutely.
So when you have the gun in your hands and you're asked to perform a legitimate duty, I don't think there's any question of having any other feelings. But let me say that the soldier is very much a part of society, and courage and bravery are not mutually exclusive with compassion and empathy for the people who are around you.
True.
Okay. So in the Northeast, personally thought that there had to be a better solution to this distrust and sometimes, even violence that had to be there. And like I said, my wife and I found that education was the way to go. If we could somehow bring education to the next generation over there, things would change drastically. And that is how we felt that education was something that would bring all the stakeholders together. That is, for instance, the local people, the uniformed forces, the rest of the country, people like you and me. And that was the way to go. And that is how I developed this concept of peace through education.
But sir, whatever it may be, the reality was that there was so much of a violence which was spread during those days.
Yeah.
So didn't you ever feel afraid and taking risk of your life, venturing out and meeting people who were not so comfortable meeting, the rest of the Indian people?
Well, it is not everybody that had this fear of, rest of India, whatever. But certainly in certain parts of the Northeast, the situation is almost dangerous, which is why the soldiers are armed. They are in counterinsurgency role. And I've served actively in those areas. But you talked about fear. I think fear is an imposter. Okay? A soldier is trained not to be afraid, but he will certainly be cautious and be concerned where he needs to be. So the word fear does not exist in the lexicon of a soldier, right from our academy days. And to be frank, when I was serving in Manipur, my last posting, I did come across numerous instances where there was extreme violence. One of our vehicles was blown up, our men were kidnapped, there was a bomb blast barely 30 feet from where I was at a particular point of time. All these things did happen. But when you go there, you still have that courage that no matter what, you will transcend all this. And as a leader, you have no business being fearful, because you have to motivate the troops under you. You have to encourage them to stand tall in the face of all such adversity.
Right, right. So you mentioned that it is through education you are trying to bring change. But are the people ready to get educated? Are they well off enough to take the education?
I would take it one step further. I think there is a hunger for education, an extreme hunger for education wherever you go in the Northeast. It is the realization that perhaps this is the route to liberation from the financial difficulties and all the other difficulties, even the violence that they may face. And to give you an example of the extent to which people go, their children who are staying in the remote areas have to go to school, which is miles away, so there is no other choice but to stay in a hostel. But the hostels are so expensive that these people cannot afford to put their children there. And so we get this particular breed of children called self-help children. Believe it or not, you have children right from their 5th and 6th standards staying in huts in villages where the schools are there, next to another family, living by themselves, cooking by themselves, and going to school. And it is astonishing how their parents come, leave them a sack of rice, chop them some firewood, once in a week, and these kids go into the forest, pick up some mushrooms or some leaves, go down to the stream and pick up a little bit of fish or snails and live by themselves. So that is the hunger for education that is there. So that is the positive thing that is there. If the country rises to give this new generation the opportunity to get that education, both the physical and the financial opportunity, I think this insurgency will be dealt with altogether. There will be a complete mindset change of the new generation. Once the children are educated, they are empowered, they get employability, they're able to go out and get away from radicalization and maybe even crime, like going across the border to Myanmar and getting drugs and whatever. It surely is a way to get away from this, insurgency situation.
So after hand holding one kid and making a chain of hand holding the other, what was the next bigger step which you took?
So with our limited resources at that time, it was only possible to support a few children. But I'm so happy that these children started doing well. A few of them who were already in professional courses, who were facing a lot of difficulty, we were able to help them through our friends for their college fees, for their hostel fees. I'm happy to say that from that group of children, right way back from 2004 and 2005, we have a super specialist doctor, we have a lawyer, we have an MBA, and many others, children who are in like that. So the next step that logically happened was, okay, now people started sponsoring us, and as you may know that today we are sponsoring as many as 3,300 children.
Amazing.
But I mentioned to you that this was only the financial part. And what about the physical part? So once I retired from the army and became the CEO of Sunbird Trust, which I conceived of, at that stage we got onto a bigger platform. At that particular stage, this innovative idea which I had of peace through education, and the fact that I, as a serviceman with a gun, at one time jumped on the other side of the gun and was actually serving with the very communities, that were in the insurgency and living among their midst. This got recognized by this international award called the Ashoka Fellowship. And I got that in 2016 from South Asia. So that was the big changes that happened. And at that stage, what I decided was, let's move to the next thing of creating these big institutions. So we started building schools and hostels in the remotest areas. When I say remote, there is even one place where we are managing to complete the school with the help of elephants. Yes, elephants, because vehicles can't get to that location, and they use the elephants for pulling these dogs to make the schools. And so that is the type of change that has happened. And we realized that every school and every hostel that we create is a hub for change for 8-10 villages from where the people send their children from. And through the children, we are able to reach the parents and reach those communities and spread our message of peace and understanding.
Can you share your experience of building that first hostel? Was it the hostel or the school which you built the first?
So about the first institution that I built, I was actually serving with the Border Roads Organization in Manipur, in Imphal, the capital. And from a tiny village called Ejairong, high up in the hills in the western part of Manipur, the tribal people came to me and said, "Sir, we've heard about your work. Can you please visit our village and help us with the school and the hostel over there?" So it was quite a surprise to me because that was an area known to be right in the the conflict zone where there were things like ambushes and whatever. And here I was still as a serving officer. But I took this leap of faith. I saw their sincerity, and it was a leap of trust, a leap of faith. And I went to that village. And on the very first day, I was shocked to find, like I mentioned to you about the self-help children, that there were about 100 odd children who were staying there in little huts, cooking by themselves just to get to school. So I found the tremendous need for building a hostel over here, which would serve children from 7 or 8 villages around the school. So I spoke to the local people and I said that I really see the need over here and I really want to join you as your partners in this venture. I'm not a charity person, but if you help me and we work shoulder to shoulder, we will be able to do this. And they immediately volunteered. They said, "Sir, we don't have money, but we have the forest. This belongs to us. This is our village property. We will give you wood. We will dig out the stones from our field and we'll give you the stone for construction. And we will give you our voluntary labor as well." I said, "Wow, that's fantastic. That's all I need." I went to the Assam Rifles and they gave me these beautiful pre-painted tin sheets. The Border Roads helped me with a little bit of cement and other resources. The Army helped me with the transportation. And all of us stakeholders got together and we built that beautiful hostel in just 6 months' time. And the story began from there. First, there were these few children. Actually, there were about 60 children at that time when we started the hostel. Within a year, that had jumped to 150. Then my friends from all over the country joined in. They gave us the solar lights, the solar lighting. We got in a computer. We got in musical instruments. We closed the self-help children and we started a kitchen where all the children were cooked for. And then I think this word spread among all the different villages. And the third year, as the case is now, we have as many as 252 children in that hostel.
You made two rival tribals come to each other with peace. How did you ensure that part? Because, they were rivals since ages. But you were capable of making them come together. How was that possible?
Yeah, so that was a social experiment. It was indeed risky. So this happened in the same hostel which I mentioned to you, which we started off. The people got so much of faith in this village that here is a total stranger, an army person coming into our village, helping us to educate our children. And I said, see, and by the way, it was people from the rest of India sponsoring each and every child. So those people who were considered as the adversary were now considered as almost part of their family for helping get their children into school. So this was a particular village. I'm not going to name tribes over here. This was a village which had seen violence as recently as the 1990, where they had clashed with the neighboring tribe and many people were killed. Just by chance, I happened to be working with both the communities. And I broached this idea. I said, now isn't it time to leave the baggage of the past? Why should the children carry this burden with them? And both of them were very excited. They said, "Sir, please tell us how." So in the village where we had the hostel, so I said that it's part of your culture. Forgiveness is part of your culture, part of your religion. Why don't you let us flow? So they said, "Sir, what would you like us to do?" So I said, let those children come here. They're also struggling to go to school. They don't because they don't have a hostel. Why don't we bring some of those children over here? So they said, "So that's a wonderful idea." Then we spoke to the women's groups in both the villages. And they were both very excited. The women actually met and discussed. And a decision was taken that they would warmly look after the children and there would be no trouble of any sort. So this is how we got the children of two communities to be together. And it was really great to see that when they had to go back, they were actually crying to say bye-bye. That is the type of bond that we were able to create. And the parents also realized if our kids can be friends, why can't we be friends? So I'm happy to say there was a big mindset change over there, and thanks to the children.
So you so simply and easily conveying these stories as if it was so easy for you to do. I'm sure there must be a lot of frustration and at times, demotivation must be setting in, not seeing the things happening as per your desire. How were such moments and what made you rise again above those frustrated moments?
You would know in an army career, there are many, many times when you see failure, multiple times, and there's multiple times that you feel frustration. And I think we learn that every time you have a failure and every time this frustration comes, it's a learning and it's a step to improving and to getting things better. So I think that is the attitude that comes out of our service career. And to tell you the truth, yes, it's been very frustrating at times. So I had all these big ideas of starting the schools and starting the hostels, and I was just wondering where the money was to come from. And I'd go so far as to say for the first 3 years, we didn't have any salary. It was just work with our goodwill, and that was the way things were going. But if there are words that I can say, I say if you have the passion, the means will follow. So that's what happened in our case. We really had this eagerness to do what we did. We were so well accepted by the local people. We showed them the way, and all these difficulties just went away. So it was one characteristic that you definitely need as an entrepreneur, whether you're a business entrepreneur or a social entrepreneur, anywhere, is this absolute tenacity and patience to deal with these troubles when they arise. And there are multiple troubles, like I said, financial is just one of them. There is sometimes systemic, sad to say, which is all across our country. There's systemic corruption in the education system, even in the various authorities and whatever. These are things that you have to deal with and which you have to overcome in some way or the other, though you may not have the power to cure them. And as we say in the army, these are difficult things, but then difficult things we tackle immediately, and the impossible things take a little longer.
So how are you managing your funds now, sir?
Managing the funds, I mentioned to you that in 2016, I was able to get this award from South Asia called the Ashoka Fellowship, which is there in 82 countries across the world. It is quite a prestigious, in fact, it is considered a gold standard for early stage social entrepreneurs across the world. So that was a symbol of, that was a mark of recognition, a mark of, which gave me a lot of opportunity and told a lot of people about us. From there, with the hostels that we built, the schools that we built, our alumni, children, seeing is believing. So whoever began to work with us saw what was happening, saw the impact of these schools. Slowly the press caught on to it also. There were articles written about us. And I think that started the process where we started getting very loyal and, good donors. Started with ordinary people giving us small sums of money to sponsor individual children. Then we had a few high net worth individuals who were very pleased to be a part of this process of not just educating, but contributing beyond that to building peace in this part of our country. And then to the next phase where the corporates, I'll name a couple, like for instance, Axis Bank and the H.T. Parekh Foundation, they have also started supporting our work. So now we are not extremely comfortable, but yes, work is going quite fine.
Sunbird is the name of the NGO which you started, sir.
Yes.
So it is now 2020. Since 2003 to 2020, what major differences Sunbird could bring?
So as I told you that when we started, it was just my wife and I sponsoring a couple of children, and though we had these ideas, we never in our dreams imagined that we would be at a stage today where we are building as many as 15 institutions, that is 7 schools and 8 hostels. We are able to sponsor as many as 3,300 children. And most of all, if I can give credit to my team of 20 young professionals, some of who have given up the corporate sector. They are MBAs, they are engineers, Teach for India fellows, Gandhi fellows. All of them have come to serve in this part of the country. So it's a huge leap where we find that we are actually becoming a kind of movement where people are trying to join us in our work. So quite a difference from where we started in 2003.
It's very interesting to know that youngsters are joining you. I want to understand that who was that first youngster who joined you and how did that happen?
Well, so when I was still in the army and I had built this hostel, I had these interns who wanted to come and stay at the hostel and work with the children in the holidays. And they were from this organization called Teach for India. So between their first year and their second year, when they had a gap, they came here. And somehow the word spread among the Teach for India organization that this was an opportunity for people to come and intern. So suddenly I get a call from this 23-year-old girl from Kerala, and she's a BITS Pilani graduate, and she had just finished her Teach for India fellowship and was wanting to join an organization. So she called me up and said, "Sir, I've heard so much about your organization from my roommate who's also intern with you that I'm absolutely determined that I should come and work with you." So I said, "Madam, I'm sorry. I think that's a wrong number. You're a BITS Pilani graduate. You're a Teach for India fellow. And we are an organization that has no salaries. We're just working in the middle of the forest in a conflict area." He said, "Sir, I know all about that, and that is the reason why I want to join you. And if you can't pay me a salary, it's okay. Just give me a roof over my head and give me food, and I will come and work over there." So I was so surprised. Then my wife said that, "What have you got to lose? Let her come." I was concerned because I had not even planned for it at that stage. I didn't have the funds also, for giving out salaries and whatever. So she said, "Sir," we told her that she could come and join. And we said, "Let's do a month of trial and see how it works for us." And so my wife said, "Okay, let her go." And we asked her, "When would you like to join?" So she said, "Sir, I'll join from tomorrow." I said, "Madam, we are sitting in Bangalore and that place is in the northeast." She said, "You don't worry." So she jumped in a train all the way from Bangalore and reached our little village over there and stayed with us for a full year. And she was the pioneer, and she made an amazing difference because she was the first outsider in that village. She created a major impact. She became a daughter of the village. And thanks to the example and thanks to her pioneering work, it started a flood of youngsters joining us after that.
That's quite inspiring and courageous of her, sir, to take that risky step of going into a village in the northeast. Amazing, amazing. So, how many children are you supporting now, sir? And what all areas they are studying, or they have already started working also?
So as I mentioned to you, we started supporting children way back from 2003. Of those, now more than 35 have graduated. I'm happy to say that almost without exception, all of them have got on to reasonably good jobs. Like I mentioned to you, one is a doctor, one is a lawyer. There are a couple of MBAs, engineers, a whole lot of them. And most of them have got excellent jobs where they're not only able to support themselves, but support their families. So in addition to that, my wife and I are actually parents to 35 children at Bangalore. Though I spend most of my time in the Northeast in the projects, happens to be my hometown, and I got 35 of the children from our villages over here for their college, and they're doing just fabulously. And I'm happy to mention that just 2 weeks ago, 14 of them finished their college and are on the threshold of self-sufficiency and, earning. It's a very exciting phase. But even more exciting is that of the 14, 8 have volunteered to join Sunbird Trust. So that is where we stand right now. I will put it on the record that with the success that we've had, thanks to our great donors, our team, we look at educating as many as 25,000 children by the year 2025. And we look to building 50 institutions, that is schools and hostels, by that year. I'm quite convinced it's going to happen.
For sure, it is going to happen, sir. There is no doubt about it. I want to understand that what is your daily routine? How do you spend your time daily?
So when we are in our villages, it is most of the time, of course, at the schools being at the heart of what we do, the schools and the hostels. But people may think that we are just an education organization. Education for me is not, a silver arrow that will solve all the problems of society. The one thing, people cannot wait for 10 years and 15 years till their children start earning. They need livelihoods. They need, employment. They need sustenance there and then. So increasingly, Sunbird has become an organization where we are spending more time, and other partners are using the beautiful platforms that we have created for livelihood generation. So we have things like even mushroom farming. There's something called Roselle. We are trying to bring in new types of, technology as far as the agriculture is concerned, where we will not do the work, but people will come and stay with us. So there is plenty of work between the school, the hostel, visiting the families of our children, which is a big part of our work. The team training session, which is again another very important part of our work. Interacting with the army, the Assam Rifles, and the local stakeholders, the women's groups, the student groups, the village councils. It's quite a full day for any of us while we are at work. That is the way it is.
So with so much of experience and working across the country, initially in the army and now as a socialpreneur in the northeastern region, what is your message to the larger country and precisely to the youngsters?
My biggest learning of all this, is that our beautiful country, when we got independence in 1947, we didn't become a whole at the stroke of the midnight hour and everything was fine and everybody had that patriotism and whatever. Okay? We still had many parts of the country till today where people still have varied aspirations. There are huge cultural differences, political differences, whatever. We have to remember that a nation like America, even in 200 years, they have not integrated fully. There is still so much of violence over there. The big message that I would like to give, especially the youth and the next generation, is please understand that we are all part of a process that is happening, work in progress of making and building our country. This is all nation building. And for that, it calls for a lot of broad-mindedness, a lot of understanding. It calls for a bit of sacrifice for our young people to go and be the difference. We don't need armchair philosophers on social media giving big messages, talking about politics and talking about, things that divide us. We need the action from this young girl that I mentioned to you and my 20 other team members who have come, sacrificed everything to be there and to make that difference. That is the message that I would like to give, especially for the youth.
Thank you so much, sir. It was superb and very satisfying knowing that what type of variety of work which you are doing in the northeastern part of the country, which is bringing peace through education. And you're spreading so much of happiness in so many families. Our good wishes for all your future endeavors also, and to all your team members and their families, sir. Thank you so much for being with us. Jai Hind.
Jai Hind, DP. Jai Hind.
So this was Colonel Christopher Rego, who might have got retired, but he never got tired in keeping the country first. As in his own words, if you are compassionate, if you are passionate about your work, even universe conspires and support come from all around. You should be focused only on your goal. Anything and everything is possible. Next week, we will meet with another such brave personality who carries the never say die attitude of the soldier. Till then, take care of yourself. Jai Hind, Bharat Mata ki Jai.